Hey guys, tonight we journey into a world you think you know, but trust me, you don't. The American Civil War. You've seen the grainy photographs, heard the names, Gettysburg, Antietam, Appomattox. Maybe you've imagined the romance of blue coats and brass buttons, galloping cavalry charges, or noble speeches on the eve of battle. But what if I told you that the reality was far more brutal, confusing, and quietly horrifying than the movies ever show? What if I told you that for most men, fighting in the Civil War didn't feel like history? It felt like mud, hunger, disease, and the bone-deep ache of fear that never quite went away. Before we get too far into tonight's story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe only if you genuinely enjoy these historical journeys. And tell me in the comments what time it is where you're listening. It's always fascinating to see just how far and wide this sleepy little campfire of ours reaches. Now, wherever you are, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum in the background. Let your shoulders drop. Unclench your jaw. It's okay. You're here now. And tonight, we're going back. Not as generals or battlefield heroes. Not as politicians or strategists with maps and cigars. You're not Lincoln. You're not Lee. You're just you. Unprepared, untrained, and very much in over your head. Tonight's journey. What it was actually like to fight in the Civil War. You were probably a farmer, or a mechanic, or a school teacher. A man with strong hands and calloused feet, but no experience marching shoulder to shoulder into the teeth of cannon fire. You didn't sign up for glory. You signed up because your town expected it, because your brother did, because a preacher said it was God's will, or maybe because a recruiter in a fancy coat promised you'd be home by Christmas. You weren't. What followed were months, maybe years of misery, confusion, and slow-motion terror. Sleeping in lice-infested tents, marching for miles on rotting shoes, eating hardtack so stale it could break a tooth, writing letters home that you weren't sure would ever be read, watching your friends vanish in clouds of smoke. No war is gentle, but the Civil War was uniquely cruel. It was a war of brothers killing brothers, of amputations without anesthesia, of black powder, rusted bayonets, and battle cries, drowned out by the deafening thunder of smoothbore muskets. And yet, you endured, somehow, day by day, because you had no choice. And tonight I want you to feel that, not just read about it, not just know the names of battles or the dates etched in textbooks, but to really feel the cold, the fear, the endless fatigue, the strange blend of boredom and horror, the awkward, itchy uniform, the dysentery, the fog of war, both literal and mental. Because for 2 million men, that wasn't history, that was life. So get comfortable, or as comfortable as you can be. You've just enlisted, and there's no turning back. You wake up before dawn, not because you want to, because someone yelled, or because someone coughed hard enough to sound like they were dying again. Or maybe it was the bugle. It doesn't matter. You're awake now, your eyes open to darkness. Not the darkness of your bedroom with blackout curtains and a soft mattress under your back. This darkness is damp. It's cold. It's real. You feel the air, thick and wet with morning dew, settling on your face like a thin, greasy film. The sky outside is just starting to turn that sickly grey pink, the colour of smoke mixed with sunrise. You blink and try to move, but your body aches in too many places at once to sort out which pain belongs to which limb. Your back hurts. Your hips are bruised from sleeping on tree roots. Your neck feels like it's been twisted by a blacksmith. Your teeth ache because you clenched them in your sleep again, waiting for something, waiting for anything to go wrong. The ground beneath you is hard, unforgiving. It's not even dirt, it's frozen mud. And it stinks. That smell is always there. A mix of body odor, wet canvas, horse sweat, ashes, and something worse. Something sour. Human waste. Rotten meat. The long, slow decay of men who haven't bathed in weeks, and food that should have been buried a month ago. You're not in a bed. You're wrapped in a blanket so coarse and greasy, it feels like you're being hugged by a dead sheep. It's a government-issued wool blanket, but it barely keeps out the cold. You can feel the dampness in your boots. Your boots which you slept in because someone might steal them if you didn't. You curl your toes and feel the leather crack, stiff with dried mud and whatever else you've stepped in over the past few weeks. Your breath fogs in front of you. It's so cold your fingers barely bend. You slept in your uniform, of course. Everyone does. It's the same grey or blue wool you've worn every single day since the war began, and it's so dirty it could probably walk away on its own. You can't remember what it looked like when it was clean. Someone nearby groaned. You turn your head and see the familiar shape of another soldier lying beside you, curled up tight, shivering. He doesn't open his eyes. His face is pale, thin, ghost-like. His blanket is pulled up over his chin. You think his name is Thomas, or maybe Henry. You've both forgotten to keep asking. To your left, someone else is already awake. He's sitting up, rubbing his face, spitting into the dirt. The spittle freezes almost instantly. He doesn't talk, just starts pulling on his gear, like it's the most natural thing in the world to wake up in a frozen field with 100 other half-dead men. Above you, the canvas of the tent, if you're lucky enough to be in one, flaps quietly. If you're not in a tent, then you're just sleeping under a blanket of stars and your own bad luck. Either way, there's no insulation, no padding, just the occasional sound of rats scurrying through sacks and the soft, rhythmic cough of the man who might not make it through the week. You roll onto your side and wince. Your shoulders roar from the way your rifle digs into it while you sleep. You sleep with it, always. Like a pet, like a crutch, like a piece of your body. It's not just for protection, it's regulation. Lose your rifle and you're as good as dead. Either the enemy gets you or your own sergeant does. You finally sit up, slowly. Your joints protest. Your lower back feels like it's filled with gravel. You stretch, and the cold air snakes under your collar, down your spine, and settles somewhere behind your lungs. You shiver hard and try not to let anyone see it. Around you, the camp is coming alive. There's no privacy, no walls, no door to shut the world out. The other men are stirring some coughing, some groaning. One already crouched over a tin pot trying to warm yesterday's beans over a smoky little fire. Someone's arguing with a mule that won't move. Another man is scratching furiously at his ribs, likely hunting lice. You smell the smoke before you see it. Someone's managed to get a fire going. It crackles weakly in the center of a circle of shivering soldiers. The flames are feeble, barely more than orange sparks, but men are already gathered around it, hands outstretched. You can see their fingers, pale and swollen with cold. Some are missing fingernails. Some are wrapped in filthy rags. You look down at your hands, blistered, cracked, raw in places. And your fingernails? Well, you try not to look too close anymore. You think about home, just for a second. Not a deep thought, just a flicker, a remembered smell, cornbread in a warm kitchen, a real bed, a pillow, your mother's voice. It's too painful to hold on to for long, so you let it drift away like smoke. Your stomach growls, but there's no real hunger anymore, just emptiness. You know breakfast will be late and cold, and maybe not come at all. It's always beans, hardtack, or salt pork so old it sweats white grease and tastes like a candle. Your commander walks by, doesn't speak, just surveys the waking camp with dead eyes. His beard is crusted with frost. His coat hangs from his frame like a curtain nailed to a fence post. No one salutes. Not anymore. Not this early. Someone jokes that today's the day they finally get shot, and another guy laughs, because honestly, that might be the first warm thing you've heard all morning. You stand up, slowly, carefully. Your legs feel like they belong to someone else. You check your gear, rifle, canteen, cartridge box, bayonet. You don't expect to fight today, but then again, you never do. The enemy is always somewhere nearby. Just out of sight, just quiet enough to keep your nerves constantly burning. You stretch again, your neck pops, and then you get moving, because lying down any longer only makes it worse. The sun is coming up now, barely. The war waits. You make your way toward the small fire like a ghost with sore feet. The frost crunches under your soles. Your boots, those battered leather relics, are cracked open at the seams. One of your toes has been numb since Tennessee. You stopped asking whether it would come back. Your breath comes in short puffs. Around you, the camp wakes slowly. Some men are still lying down, bargaining with their joints. Others are digging in their satchels for food, not because they're hungry that was last month, but because it's better than thinking. Your stomach aches, but you already know breakfast is going to be exactly what it was yesterday, and the day before that, and the day before that. Hardtack, a biscuit so dense it could double as ammunition, flour and water, baked into the shape of a rectangle, and then forgotten about for 3 weeks. It's not soft, it's not flaky, it's not food, it's punishment in cracker form. You pull one out from your canvas bag and knock it against your canteen. It clicks like bone. That's normal. You inspect it for weevils. Again, normal. You've gotten good at tapping the edge and watching tiny bugs crawl out from the cracks. Sometimes they don't crawl. Sometimes you just eat them. Crunchy protein. Saves time. To wash it down, there's the company coffee if you're lucky. A bitter black brew made from burned beans and river water filtered through the same sock someone used as a bandage 2 weeks ago. You drink it anyway. It scalds your throat and tastes like someone boiled regret. But it's hot, and that counts for something. If there's no coffee, there's water, or something pretending to be water. Lukewarm, gritty, probably dipped out of a nearby stream where a horse recently died. You drink around the chunks and pray that the powder they handed out last week, anti-scurvy tonic, actually does something. It doesn't. Someone has a tin of salt pork. It hisses in a skillet over the fire. The smell is memorable, like burnt leather and spoiled fat. The meat is grey, tough, and slick with fat that never melts. You chew slowly and try not to gag. The aftertaste stays with you all day, like an old argument. There are no eggs, no toast, no fruit, no butter. Not unless you stole it from a civilian house 2 towns ago, and even then, it was probably already half mold. Breakfast is not meant to comfort you. It's meant to keep you vertical. Some men are chewing on dried apples. Some nibble old cornbread they've kept wrapped in cloth. Most just huddle around the fire with a single thought: get it over with. Once you've eaten, if you can call it that, it's time to wash up. There are no sinks, no soap, no toothbrushes, no warm towels. You walk down to the river, or maybe just over to a muddy bucket someone filled yesterday, and you splash your face with water so cold it gives you an instant headache. You scrub your eyes with your fingers and smear dirt across your cheek in the process. You've been using the same rag for weeks. It used to be white. Now it's the color of your conscience, grey and questionable. Your hands are filthy, always. There's dirt under every nail. Your fingers are blackened with powder residue, ink or blood, depending on what yesterday looked like. You try brushing your teeth with a twig. Not for freshness, that's a fantasy. Just to scrape off the fuzz. You snap off the end, chew it, and run the frayed tip along your molars. Your gums bleed a little. That's normal too. Some men have lye soap. Some, if you're one of them, you use it sparingly. You rub it on your face and neck like you're trying to remember what skin used to feel like. The rest of you stays untouched either because you don't have time or because undressing in this weather would be a death sentence. Bathing? Forget it. You haven't had a full bath in weeks, maybe months. When you do finally get one, it'll be in a horse trough with 3 other men and water that looks like it came out of a boot. Your hair itches constantly. Lice are a given. Everyone has them. You scratch, but it never helps. Sometimes you find bites, little red bumps along your waistband or down your legs. You stop counting. Changing clothes is a luxury. You've been in the same uniform so long that the inside feels like your second skin. It smells like sweat, mildew, and whatever crawled into your bedroll 2 nights ago and died. Your underwear, if you still have any, is stiff. Not from starch, from sheer neglect. It sticks to your thighs like old bandages. You consider peeling it off, then decide it's safer to pretend it isn't there. You roll up your blanket, carefully. It's your most valuable possession, not for comfort, but for survival. It's the only thing between you and the frozen dirt when you lie down at night. Someone nearby spits a black glob onto the ground. Tobacco. He's already got a cheekful. You watch him for a second, his hands trembling as he re-rolls his blanket and tucks a pouch of powder into his coat. You nod. He nods back. That's all you need. Someone coughs. Not a morning cough. A deep one. The kind that rattles the ribs. You turn your head instinctively. You don't want to see who it is. You don't want to remember their name. Names get people killed. Your gear is waiting. Your rifle, your cartridge box, your haversack, your canteen, your blanket roll. You lift them all with muscle memory. There's no ceremony, no thought. You've done this every morning since you enlisted, and every morning feels more distant from the day you raised your hand and swore an oath you can barely remember. You aren't a soldier anymore. Not really. You're something else now. A machine made of wool, mud, and habits. And once your gear's on, your boots tied, your rifle slung, there's nothing left to do but wait. For orders, for marching, for the next meal, for the next letter, for the next sound that means someone nearby has died. The sun rises higher. Your stomach churns. Your hands are still sticky with fat from that grey pork. You wipe them on your coat. There's a man nearby humming something. A song you almost recognize. Something from home. You don't ask him what it is. Instead, you bend down, pick up your cap, dust it off, and get ready for another day in the war that refuses to end. Your uniform is less of a uniform now, and more like a punishment you never stop wearing. You don't think about putting it on anymore. It just stays on. Every day, every night, through the rain, the sweat, the snow, the marches, the blood, the prayers. You wear it like a second skin, one that doesn't breathe, doesn't fit, and doesn't care if you die in it. It was once a proud shade of blue, or grey, or maybe something in between, depending on what kind of cloth the quartermaster could get his hands on that week. Now it's just brown. Brown with dirt. Brown with dried blood. Brown with time. Your coat is wool thick, scratchy, and as breathable as a brick. In summer, it cooks you from the inside. In winter, it absorbs every drop of cold and holds it against your bones like a grudge. The sleeves are fraying, the collar itches, the buttons are mismatched or missing. One's replaced with a carved bit of bone from a cow that didn't survive last month's march. The lining? There is no lining. That disappeared months ago, ripped out and used to patch a comrade's boot, or traded for a tin of coffee. You've sewn it back together at least 4 times, using whatever thread you could beg or steal. One stitch is red, another is white, A few are dental floss. Nobody judges. Your trousers sag. They're too big now, you've lost weight since you enlisted. Everyone has. The waistband is cinched tight with an old leather belt and sheer stubbornness. The knees are patched, the cuffs are ragged, and the back pocket fell off somewhere in Kentucky. Underneath, if you're lucky, a coarse linen shirt so stiff it could stand up on its own. If you're unlucky, the same shirt you've worn for 3 weeks straight, sweat-stained, lice-ridden, and full of little tears from sleeping on roots and crawling through brush. There is no such thing as fresh. There's not as bad as yesterday. And there's unfit for burial. You're somewhere in between. And the underclothes? Maybe a pair of drawers that haven't seen water since the last rainstorm. They chafe. They pinch. You adjust constantly and never with any privacy. Your socks are a joke. One has a toe missing. The other has been turned inside out 3 times to hide the hole in the heel. You patch them with old rags and wrap twine around your ankles to hold them together. It works, barely. Now let's talk about the boot. They don't fit. They never did. They were handed to you by a quartermaster who barely looked at your feet. Left and right boots? Not a thing. These are just boots. If you're lucky, they're made of real leather. If not, they're canvas reinforced with wax and prayers. The soles are worn flat. You can feel every pebble, every splinter of plank road, every sharp edge of frozen dirt. Some men have hammered nails into the bottoms just to keep them from falling apart. Others wrap the whole boot in twine, like a desperate Christmas present. The blisters come and go. The trench foot never really leaves. You don't even notice the smell anymore, but others do. When you sit around the fire and peel your boots off, no one looks, no one speaks. It's an unspoken agreement we will not acknowledge the horror that lives inside these socks. And over all of it, your blanket roll. The great, grimy serpent slung across your chest every day. It's your bed, your pillow, your scarf, your only hope of not freezing to death at 3 a.m. It smells like everything you've been through. Sweat, smoke, fear, mold. You sleep on it. You carry it. You curse it. You love it. As for shelter, it depends on the day and your luck. Sometimes you have a tent. Sometimes you just have your coat and whatever courage hasn't left your body yet. When you do have a tent, it's a small wedge made of thin canvas, just big enough for 2 men to lie down shoulder to shoulder, like corpses waiting for a sermon. There's no floor, no insulation, just open air and a lot of mud. You stake it with sticks, if you can find any. Otherwise, you tie it to your rifle and pray the wind doesn't rip it out of the ground. The seams leak. The flap doesn't close. If it rains, you're wet. If it snows, you're buried. If it hails, you hope the canvas softens the blows. Inside, your blanket on the ground, your rifle tucked beside you, maybe a tin plate, a canteen, a spoon, a rosary. Whatever small thing reminds you that you're still a human being. You try to sleep. You really do. But the cold eats through the canvas. The wind howls. Your neighbor snores or coughs or cries quietly into his blanket. There are nights when you wake up with your fingers frozen to your rifle strap. Nights when you wake up and someone else doesn't. And then there are the nights with no tent at all. You sleep outside, under the trees, under the sky, under nothing. You dig a little hole if you can, just enough to block the wind. You curl up and pull your coat over your face. You bury your hands between your thighs to keep them from going numb. You shiver so hard it feels like a seizure. You don't even notice the bugs anymore. You tell yourself it's just for one night. Then another. Then another. And when winter really comes, God help you. The frost sets in your boots. Your breath turns to crystals in your beard. Your canteen freezes solid. You wake up covered in a fine layer of ice. Your joints creak like old floorboards, and still you get up. Because if you don't, you might never again. There are days when your coat soaks through and never dries, when your tent collapses under snow, when the only warmth you find is the steam rising off the back of a dying mule. On those days, you think about home, about beds with mattresses, blankets that don't smell like mold and death, socks with toes, shoes with soles, a roof that doesn't leak. But those are just memories now. This is your world, canvas and wool, smoke and mud, threadbare sleeves and blisters that never heal. You wear it all like armor, even though none of it protects you. You might think the worst part of war is the battles, and sure, the battles are loud, they're bloody, they're terrifying, but they're also rare. What isn't rare? Digging, marching, hauling wood, hauling water, cleaning latrines, chopping trees, piling dirt, waiting, and then doing it all again. You wake up sore, you go to bed sore, and in between you perform tasks that would break a mule. This morning, you're on picket duty. That means you'll stand in the cold for hours, watching an empty field, hoping the enemy doesn't appear, and also hoping that if they do, your frozen fingers will still work well enough to pull the trigger. It's not glamorous. It's not heroic. It's just cold and boring and important. After picket, you're back in camp. Orders come down from the officer. His boots are clean. Yours aren't. Today, it's corduroy road repair. You and 20 other miserable souls are dragging logs through the swamp, laying them side by side to make a passable road for artillery wagons. The logs are heavy, the mud is deeper than your ankles. The mosquitoes are bold, and the tools are dull. You grip an axe and swing until your shoulder starts to throb. Then you keep swinging, because there's no stopping until the lieutenant says so. You carry water next. From the stream, from the creek, from whatever trickle of filth is nearby. It takes 4 trips to fill the barrels. The water is yellow. You drink it anyway. By midday, you're ordered to dig a trench. Or maybe it's a rifle pit. Maybe it's a latrine. The holes all look the same after a while. You dig with a shovel that's warped and splintered, and your hands are blistered before the hour ends. The dirt is rocky. The sun is high. You remove your coat, then regret it, then put it back on. You're soaked with sweat beneath it either way. A man next to you, Elijah, maybe, or Josiah, collapses. He's not dead, just overheated. You splash a bit of water on his face, and the sergeant grumbles, "Get him on his feet." No rest, no shade, no mercy. War is labor. War is logistics. War is doing whatever needs to be done to keep the whole rotten machine from collapsing. You march, miles and miles and miles, always with your gear. The haversack cuts into your shoulder. The blanket roll slides down your back. Your boots are soaked again, but you keep walking. If you're lucky, the road is dirt. If you're not, it's gravel, cobblestone, or mud deep enough to steal your shoes right off your feet. You march uphill. You march in silence. You march past towns that have already been burned. You pass farmhouses missing doors and windows. Sometimes children stare at you. Sometimes they run. Sometimes you see the burnt remains of someone who didn't get out in time. When you're not digging or marching, you're on mess duty. That means stirring pots, peeling spoiled onions, trying to make hardtack soft enough to chew. If you're the unlucky soul tasked with coffee, you learn to scrape burnt beans out of the bottom of a kettle using the edge of your bayonet. If you're not cooking, you're cleaning. Buckets of grey water are tossed into the weeds. Tin cups are rinsed with a rag that's been used by 20 men before you. Dishes? What dishes? You eat from your hands, your helmet, your luck. Sometimes you're assigned to bury the dead, not after a battle, just after camp. Disease takes more men than bullets ever will. Diarrhea, dysentery, fever, pneumonia. Every morning, another shape under a blanket. You help dig a trench, whisper a prayer, and cover them with dirt. If you're on wagon escort, you walk beside a train of creaking supply carts, guarding crates of biscuits, ammunition, and boots. You walk through rain, through dust, through forest. You swat flies, sweat through your coat, and keep one hand on your rifle in case of bushwhackers. And still, every moment of your day is under threat of being interrupted by battle. So while you march, you're also listening. Every snap of a twig, every far-off echo. You live in that half-alert state where your heart never fully settles in your chest. You don't rest. You don't relax. You just exist, like a musket that's been left half-cocked. And when the real marching orders come, you line up. You put one foot in front of the other. You move as a column, dust rising in your face, shoulders slumped, boots dragging, the sun beating down like a drum. 5 miles, 10, 20. Some men drop, some pass out, some go mad. And the ones who don't, they keep going because they're ordered to, because they don't know what else to do, because maybe, just maybe, if they keep moving, they won't have to think about where they are. And in between all this, you write letters, you boil lice, you wipe mud off your gun, you stack firewood, you scrape candle wax off your fingers, you sew a patch into your pants using horsehair and a bent needle. You sharpen your bayonet because it makes you feel like you're in control of something, anything. You haul logs, you cut down trees, you dry your socks over a dying fire. You carry a wounded man's rifle because his hands were shaking too much to hold it. You wait for mail, you wait for marching orders, you wait for something to change, but nothing ever does. The labor never stops. The war never sleeps. And neither do you, not really. You don't talk about it much, not out loud, not to the others. But you believe in something. You have to, because if you didn't, you'd go mad. Some men carry a Bible in their breast pocket, not just for reading for protection. They say it can stop a bullet. Some swear it already has. You've seen men show off Bibles with torn pages and a flattened musket ball lodged between Psalms and Proverbs. You don't ask if the bullet was already spent before it hit. You just nod. Faith is like that. Out here, part comfort, part survival gear, part magical shield. You hold onto it the same way you hold your rifle. You may not understand it. You may not even trust it, but it's the only thing between you and the darkness, sometimes. In camp, there are sermons. When there's time, when there's a chaplain, you've stood in the mud while a preacher in a threadbare coat spoke about salvation and sacrifice and how the Lord watches over soldiers. He talked about valor and virtue and God's will. You didn't hear much of it. You were too focused on the smell of wood smoke, the feel of damp wool sticking to your chest, and the sound of someone coughing up blood just outside the firelight. Still, you bowed your head. You said, Amen. You meant it, or you wanted to. The Civil War is soaked in religion on both sides. You've heard Union officers say this war is God's punishment for the sin of slavery. You've heard Confederate preachers insist God is testing the South's resolve, purifying it through fire. Everyone believes God is on their side, and everyone's still dying just the same. When you kneel beside a dying comrade, you don't ask about theology. You ask if he wants a prayer. Almost always he does. You hold his hand, squeeze it, and whisper something. Doesn't matter if the words are perfect. Just that they're there. You've heard men recite the Lord's Prayer through cracked lips. You've seen others die with the name of Jesus barely audible between gasps. You've also seen some scream curses until their last breath. It's not your place to judge. That's for someone else, someone higher. You pray, but it's different now. Before the war, your prayers were long, thoughtful, full of words and warmth. Now they're short, desperate, muttered before battle, whispered before sleep. Please don't let me die today. Please let the letter come. Please keep the fever away. Please don't let it be my turn next. You don't pray to win. You pray to survive. And that's where superstition creeps in, because religion's not always enough. You've seen men turn their coats inside out before a fight. They say it confuses bullets. You've seen men refuse to carry a picture of their sweetheart because the last man who did got shot through the chest. One guy from Georgia maybe tied a rabbit's foot to his bayonet, swore it kept him alive at Antietam, swore it twitched before the cannon fire started. Another refuses to shave on Sundays, said his brother did once and was dead before sundown. Some men won't eat the last biscuit. Others never sit with their back to a campfire. You don't ask why. You don't need to ask why, because you have your own rules too. Maybe you always lace your boots left first. Maybe you never wear your old hat on a march. Maybe you carry a stone from your family farm in your pocket. Maybe you touch it before every battle. Maybe you believe it keeps you tethered to something real. Maybe it doesn't. But belief, even small, strange belief, is a kind of armor. And armor is rare in this war. When a man dies, you cover his face. You close his eyes. If there's time, you whisper something for him. You try to find a verse. You try to remember a hymn. But some deaths are fast. Too fast for words, so you keep the rituals for the living. You sit around the fire and tell stories about heaven, about dream, about how maybe, just maybe, you'll see each other again someday beyond this mud, this sickness, this grey purgatory of marching and misery. You talk about angels, you talk about justice, you talk about redemption, and on nights when the wind is howling, and the stars are hidden behind smoke, you try to believe it's true. Even the men who say they don't believe in anything, they still carry tokens. A locket, a ribbon, a pressed flower, a page torn from scripture, folded and worn like a lucky coin. These aren't decorations. They're anchors, because when the cannon fire starts, when the smoke rolls in, and you can't see the man 5 feet to your right, faith is the only thing that keeps your knees from buckling. Some pray aloud, some stay silent, but everyone, at some point, makes a deal with God. If you let me live, I'll never curse again. If I make it out, I'll go home and marry her. If I survive, I'll change everything. I'll be better. I swear it. Quote, and when the fighting ends, if you're lucky enough to still be standing, you look up at the sky and wonder if he heard you. You don't expect an answer, but you still hope for one, because even in this muddy, blood-soaked nightmare, hope survives. You see it in the chaplain's hands, shaking as he distributes tiny New Testaments before a march. You hear it in the hum of a hymn while men dig trenches. You feel it in the quiet moments, when someone passes you a scrap of paper with a Bible verse written in smudged ink and says, "Keep this, just in case." You keep it. You fold it twice. You don't know the verse, but you hold it anyway. You don't eat to enjoy it. You eat to not die. That's the first rule of food in the Civil War. You eat what they give you, when they give it, if they give it. And what they give you is barely edible. Often it's not even that. The usual suspects: salt pork, hardtack, coffee if you're lucky, spoiled rice if you're not. If it's got weevils, you shake 'em out. If it's moldy, you scrape it off. If it stinks, you close your eyes and chew faster. You never complain. Or rather, you always complain. But you eat anyway. Because hunger is a more persistent enemy than any Confederate sharpshooter. Salt pork is the closest thing to meat you get regularly. It comes in slabs, fatty, slimy, salted to the point of being indistinguishable from leather soaked in ocean water. It's packed in barrels, swimming in its own grease, and by the time it's served, it smells like something pulled from the bottom of a dock. You slice it with your bayonet, fry it in your tin pan over a fire made of wet wood. The fat pops and hisses, coating your face in a thin film of soot and lard. The taste? If you're lucky, bland. If you're not, rancid, but it's food, and you need it. Then there's hardtack, the infamous biscuit of war. It's square, rock hard, and could double as a paving stone. Made of flour, water, and suffering. You can't bite into it without risking a cracked molar. You dunk it in coffee to soften it. You smash it with your rifle butt. Some men crumble it into their stew, if they're fortunate enough to have one. Others just suck on it like a tasteless lozenge, hoping the saliva will make it chewable in under 20 minutes. You joke about it. You name it. Some call it sheet iron, others tooth dullers. A few men insist it's the same batch General Scott used in the Mexican War. Nobody's sure they're wrong. And the coffee god, the coffee, Union soldiers especially, live for it. It's strong, bitter, burned half the time, and made from beans so old they might qualify as fossils. But it's sacred. You boil it over a fire, strain it through whatever rag you haven't used as a bandage, and gulp it down black and hot. When the coffee runs out, you panic, you curse. Some guys try to make substitutes: burnt rye, ground chicory, even dried apples. Nothing works. It's all garbage. You trade for coffee like it's gold. You'd give up extra socks, even ammunition, just for a few beans. You've seen a man sell his watch for 1 tin of grounds. When coffee is served, a kind of reverence takes over camp. It's not just about taste, it's about hope. Something warm, something comforting, something that doesn't smell like death. Drinks beyond coffee? There's water. Sometimes. It's not clean, it's brown, it's warm. You scoop it from streams that run past corpses and latrines, and you drink it anyway. Sometimes you boil it. Sometimes you're too tired to care. Then there's alcohol. Not often, but when it comes heavy. Some officers pass out whiskey rations before battle. Some don't. Soldiers scrounge for moonshine, cider, anything to numb the edges of fear. You've drunk homemade spirits that made you forget your own name, or worse, made you remember too much. In camp, men sneak away with tin cups filled with applejack or rotgut. It burns. It blinds. It's probably made from tree bark and shoe polish, but it works. For a little while, you forget where you are, until you wake up and remember even harder. But food and drink, as awful as they are, aren't just about sustenance. They're social, they're ritual, they're survival in another form. After dinner, if there's dinner, you sit around the fire with the others. You eat in a circle, shoulder to shoulder, passing tins and swapping whatever scraps you manage to forage or trade for. Someone might have a piece of dried fruit, someone else a bit of molasses. One guy traded for a boiled sweet from a civilian child. He lets everyone sniff it like a relic. This is the closest thing to joy you'll see all week. Then, as the stars come out, the camp begins to shift. Men laugh, men talk, men remember they're still people. A guy pulls out a harmonica. Another taps a rhythm on a tin plate. Someone sings badly. The lyrics are always the same. Home, women, whiskey, the fear of dying, far from both. Popular songs make the rounds. Dixie, the battle cry of freedom. Lorena, that slow, mournful waltz everyone seems to know. Even if they're too proud to admit it brings tears. You hear hymns sometimes. Amazing grace, nearer, my God, to thee. The older men sing them slow, heads bowed. The younger men hum along, not sure of the words, but moved by the sound. Sometimes, when it's quiet, a story gets told. a joke, an old memory of something that happened before the war, before all of this. The laughter is soft, like men afraid to be too loud in case the darkness listens. Gambling is everywhere. Cards get passed around. Pennies, buttons, even bullets serve as currency. You've seen men lose everything but the clothes on their back. You've also seen a private win so many hands he was able to buy a full tin of real tobacco. He smoked it slowly for 3 days. Dice, dominoes, chess sets carved from bone or wood scraps. If it distracts the brain, it's in demand. Some guys invent games. Some tell tall tales. Some lie about the girls waiting back home. Nobody calls them out. You want to believe them too. There are shows too when there's time. Impromptu plays. Men dressing in stolen curtains and performing terrible Shakespeare. One guy sings like a bird and gets a standing ovation from 30 men who haven't bathed in a month. For a brief, blessed hour, you forget that your boots are wet, your belly is empty, and your life is hanging by a thread. But not everyone joins the fun. Some men sit by themselves, staring into the fire, watching the flames like they're trying to remember something. Or forget it. Some write letters home, hunched over with a pencil nub, scrawling words they'll never be able to reread. Some sharpen bayonets, not because they need to, because it's something to do with their hands, something to make them feel prepared. Some just stare into the dark, waiting for sleep to come, or for the next bugle call. So yes, there is laughter, there is song, there is coffee, and hardtack, and burnt pork. But beneath it all is a current, a heaviness, a knowledge that at any moment, all of it could end, that tomorrow's meal might be your last, that the man telling jokes tonight might be gone by morning. So you pass the tin cup, you sing the song, you laugh at the terrible joke, you eat the wormy biscuit, because sometimes pretending you're okay is the only thing holding your sanity together. You don't hear a gunshot, you don't see an enemy, you just wake up one morning and realize your tent mate hasn't moved. Not in hours. You call his name, he wheezes, barely. You see the sweat shining on his forehead, even though it's freezing cold. And that's when you know it's not a bullet that'll get him, it's something slower, something wetter, something crawling around inside him that no one can stop. Disease is the real general in this war. You've learned this the hard way. Dysentery, typhoid, pneumonia, malaria, smallpox, measles. You don't need to fight to die out here. You just need to share a cup, or drink from the wrong stream, or breathe next to the wrong man for too long. The latrines are shallow, the water is filthy, the food is questionable, the air is thick with smoke, sweat, rot, and human breath. You know men who've been shot through the shoulder and survived. You know others who sneezed on Monday and were buried by Friday. It starts small, always. A cough, a bit of nausea, a warm forehead, a slight chill. You try to ignore it. You keep moving, but it worsens. Soon you can't keep food down. Your stomach cramps. You sweat at night, shiver during the day. Your breath rattles. You spit into the dirt and notice blood. Just a little, then more. Your friends try not to look at you. They've seen it before. If it's dysentery, the pain is constant, like something twisting inside your guts with a hot iron. You lose strength. You can't hold food. You squat behind the tent a dozen times a day, legs shaking, breath short. You carry a rag to clean yourself. You burn it at night. You smell terrible. You know you do, but no one says anything. They're all waiting to see if it happens to them next. If it's typhoid, you burn from the inside. Your fever rises until you forget who you are. You say strange things. You cry out in the night. You don't recognize your own name. And then you stop speaking altogether. You lie still. Your eyes flutter. And then nothing. No goodbye, no last words. Just silent. The blanket gets pulled over your face, and your boots are passed down to the next man who needs them. The hospital tents are worse. You don't go there unless you're already halfway to the grave. They're dark, humid, and smell like mold and death. Flies gather on everything, especially the patients. Moaning is constant. Screams are background noise. The air is full of rot. There are no clean sheets, no antiseptic, no anesthesia, just old hands with bone sores and rags soaked in whiskey. And if they don't cut fast enough, you die screaming. If they do cut fast enough, you die later. Amputation is the most common cure. You've seen a man go in with a wounded finger and come out missing a whole arm because infection spreads fast. And the only thing the doctors know how to do is remove whatever might kill you before it kills you. The medics mean well, most of them, but they're tired, undertrained, overworked. Some are old men. Some are boys who once read a pamphlet and now carry rusty scalpels in leather kits. The tools are wiped between patients, but never washed. Not really. One man screams while a leg is taken off at the thigh. Another bites on a stick while his jaw is cut open to drain an abscess. You don't watch. You try not to hear, but you do. You always do. They give you quinine for fever's bitter, chalky powder that tastes like metal and regret. They give you calomel for diarrhea, a mercury compound that's just as likely to kill you as cure you. For pain, maybe a few drops of laudanum opium mixed with alcohol. You've seen men lose themselves to it. They start forgetting things. Then they stop caring. Then they disappear inside themselves. Still, you ask for it when the pain gets bad, because even oblivion sounds better than this. Death doesn't knock. It slinks in like a draft. You feel it long before it arrives. Some men fight it. Some in beat fights. Some just stare at the ceiling and go still. And when it happens, the living do what they must. A shallow grave, a wooden marker, maybe a prayer, maybe not. Sometimes you don't even get a name. Just private. Just unknown. Just a boot tied to a stick so someone, someday, might know someone once died there. You used to fear death. Now you just hope it's quick. You've seen what it looks like when it's slow, when it leaks out of a man day by day, until he's just a whisper in a bedroll. Sometimes you envy the ones who died in battle. At least they didn't have to lie in a puddle of their own filth for 3 days, while the chaplain muttered verses and the surgeon shrugged. But even in all this darkness, there are moments. Moments where someone brings you cool water in a tin cup, where a nurse from town wipes your forehead with a wet cloth and hums a lullaby, where a friend stays beside you through the night, holding your hand when the fever breaks, and you cry without meaning to. Moments where the fireflies appear outside the tent, and for half a second the world feels like it might still be beautiful. You keep going. You try not to breathe too deeply near the sick. You drink water only after boiling it. You wash your hands if there's a stream. You sleep with your mouth covered if someone nearby is coughing. You tell yourself you're being smart, but you know the truth. Out here, death doesn't care how careful you are. It just waits. So you carry that fear quietly, like a second rifle, like an extra weight in your pack. And every morning when you open your eyes, you whisper 2 words, "Still here." Then you rise and prepare to do it all again. You weren't the only one drafted by this war. You may have been the one to march, to bleed, to fire a rifle in the fog and mud. But back home in a cabin, on a porch, behind a spinning wheel, someone else is fighting a different kind of war. Her hands are just as blistered, her back just as sore, her nights just as sleepless. She didn't carry a musket, but she carried everything else. Your wife, if you had one, didn't stop living when you left. She just stopped having help. Now she runs the farm, Alone. She plants, she weeds, she milks the cow. She mends your clothes, even though you aren't there to wear them. She fixes the fence you always meant to get to. She kills the chicken you used to catch. She splits the wood with hands that never stop shaking from exhaustion. She wakes the children at dawn and tucks them in long after the candles should have burned out. She writes you letters, carefully, slowly, sometimes with a neighbor's help, sometimes by memory. If she never learned how, she signs it, yours always, and prays it gets to you before something else does. If she's in the South, the war is on her doorstep. Union troops might come through and take the livestock, or the corn, or the house. They say they're just foraging, but when they leave, the well is empty, the barn is burned, and the children cry at the sound of boots. If she's in the North, she waits, not knowing, not sleeping. Every knock at the door could be a telegram. Sometimes she dreams of you, whole and smiling. Sometimes she dreams of you silent and cold, mouth full of blood. She wakes up either way, alone, and the children, they don't understand at first. They ask when Papa's coming back. They write you crayon-scrawled notes and beg to send them in the mail. They play soldier in the field, using sticks as rifles and yelling "charge" with innocent pride. But time passes, and they get quieter. They help on the farm. They grow up too fast. Your boy starts using words he shouldn't know. Your girl starts crying at night and saying it's just the wind. They miss you. They don't say it. They just look at the door sometimes, like they still believe you'll walk through it any moment. If you were black, the war meant something more, whether you were free or enslaved. If you were enslaved, the war might have torn your family apart again. Your son sold to a distant plantation, your daughter taken to help at the master's house, your husband run off, or worse. But it also offered a glimmer, just a glimmer of freedom. You might follow the Union Army, working as a cook, a washerwoman, a nurse, just to be near something that looked like hope. Some women walked hundreds of miles behind regiments, barefoot and carrying babies, just to avoid being dragged back into chains. If you were free, you still weren't safe. Your letters were delayed. Your land was threatened, and your man might come home from the war in a blue uniform, only to be lynched in one. But you kept going. You raised your children. You taught them letters, even when it was illegal. You sang to them old songs, because written words weren't always allowed. You braided their hair with hands that had survived more than bullets ever could. Every woman, north, south, black, white, carried a piece of this war. Some carried it in the form of tin photographs, pressed to their chest during prayer. Some carried it as silence long, hard silences over empty chairs at the supper table. Some carried it as babies born with fathers they would never meet. Some carried it in graves, dug by hand, marked with wood and weeping. The home wasn't just waiting during the war. It was breaking, working, fighting. A war of firewood and flour, of illness without medicine, of rumors with no proof, and somehow they endured. You think of her sometimes, your wife, or your mother, or your sister, whoever it is that's still sending you letters. You pull them out at night when it's quiet. You reread the words slowly, like they might disappear. Sometimes she tells you about the harvest, about the baby walking, about how she saw a bird that made her think of you. Sometimes she doesn't say anything at all, just, "Come home soon." You don't write back as often as you should. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you don't know what to say. What do you say to the person whose world you left behind? What do you say when you're not sure you'll ever see them again? Some men desert. They walk away from the army and back to the hills, trying to get home. Some make it, most don't, but no one really blames them. Not when you see what war does to a man, and not when you imagine your children hungry and your wife digging potatoes with her bare hands. Family is a ghost that walks beside you. You don't speak to it, but it's there, in your coat pocket, in your thoughts during guard duty, in the way you hum that lullaby to yourself, the one your mother used to sing when you were a boy. And when men die, and they do, every day their families are left with nothing. Maybe a folded flag, maybe a letter written by someone else, maybe just a name on a list. There are no pensions, no photographs of the body, no funerals with music and flowers, just silence and more work. So yes, you fight, but they survive. And survival is a war all its own. It's after lunch, if you had any. The sun is high. The sweat runs down your back like melted wax. You're tired, not from marching, not from digging, but from everything. This is the part of the day where things start to crack. The heat, the boredom, the pressure, and the fact that some of the men around you are barely holding it together. Fights break out, not often, but they do. You've seen two men go at it over a stolen spoon. You've seen a corporal draw a knife because someone said something about his sister. You've seen blood spilled not from battle but from boots, fists, or fury too long held in. You'd think the war was enough, but somehow men always find a reason to turn on each other. It might be over rations. It might be over cards. It might be because someone said the wrong thing about the wrong state. But mostly, it's just pressure. This war squeezes everything out of you: patience, hope, even decency. And sometimes, there's just nothing left but anger. Then there's the chain of command. The men above you, they don't always deserve to be there. Some are old West Point men, sharp, disciplined, brutal. Others are politicians in borrowed coats, given rank because they donated to the right cause. You're supposed to salute them. You mostly don't, because they don't know what it's like to sleep in lice and eat spoiled beans and carry a wounded friend until your knees give out. They ride horses. You march, and you feel every step. Punishments are swift and ugly. Fall asleep on guard duty. Tie him to a tree for 24 hours, no food, no water. Caught stealing, 10 lashes. 20 more. Caught deserting? Well, then they make an example out of you. You've seen a man tied to a post and shot by his own company. A blindfold. A chaplain. A quiet, shaken firing line. Then a volley. Some men cried as they pulled the trigger. Some didn't. No one talked about it after, but everyone remembered. There are other kinds of punishment too. Fatigue duty. That means the worst jobs. Hauling latrine barrels, burying animals, burning spoiled meat, cleaning out the wagons that carry the dead. It's humiliating, but it's not the worst thing. The worst thing is knowing that the officer who assigned it probably did it to show he could. That's how the army works. Orders first. Fairness later, maybe never. Social tensions are everywhere. You might share a fire with men from 5 different states and 5 different ideas of how this war should be fought. A man from Vermont doesn't talk like a man from Alabama. A man from Ohio might trust Lincoln. A man from New York might curse him. A man from Georgia might say slavery isn't the point. A man from Mississippi will swear it is. You try not to talk politics, but sometimes after too many hours and too little sleep, someone says something that can't be unsaid. Voices rise, fists clench. You stare into the fire and hope it blows over. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it ends with someone sleeping on the ground with a black eye and a broken tooth. And then there's race. If you're a black soldier in a Union regiment, or worse, if you're part of the contraband camps following the army, the rules change. You're given the worst food, the most dangerous duties. You're mocked, ignored, sometimes beaten, sometimes murdered, and not by the enemy. Even in a war claiming to fight for freedom, not everyone wants you free. You march anyway, because marching is better than slavery, because wearing the uniform, even when it's hated, is still wearing it. And because you're hoping that somewhere down this long, bloody road, there's dignity waiting. Deserters, looters, cowards, rebels. The war has names for all of them. Sometimes they're true, sometimes they're not. You've seen a man run because he couldn't take the noise anymore. You've seen a man refuse to load his rifle because he couldn't bear to kill again. You've seen men sneak off to sleep under a tree, whispering the name of their dead brother, hoping to dream of something before waking up to hell. The army calls it cowardice. You call it being human, but you can't say that out loud. So you just help them up, hand them their canteen, and pretend nothing happened. Sometimes the conflict comes from inside you. The guilt, the rage, the hopelessness. You start to wonder who you were before all this, before the uniform, the lice, the digging, the waiting. You used to laugh more. You used to sing. Now your humor is sharp and dry, sarcastic, a shield more than a joke. You wonder what kind of man you'll be after, if there is an after. And some days like this one, you feel the cracks forming. You drop your gear a little too hard. You snap at a friend over nothing. You feel your hands shaking when there's no reason for them to. No gunfire, no shouting, just shaking. And you know something inside is splintering, but you don't have time to break. You don't have permission. So you take a breath, tighten your belt, and go dig another trench. Afternoons are dangerous, not because of the enemy, but because this is when the silence settles, when the war gets quiet, when men start thinking too much, and when there's too much thinking, there's conflict. Sometimes in whispers, sometimes in fists, sometimes in tears you don't let anyone see. The sun drops behind the tree line, like a curtain being pulled too fast. 1 minute you're looking at the muddy ground beneath your boots. The next you're looking at nothing at all. And that's when the fear settles in, not the hot, panicked fear of bullets and charging lines. This fear is slower, colder, more patient. Because nightfall in a civil war camp doesn't bring rest. It brings possibility of ambush, of fire, of screams, of never opening your eyes again. The fires flicker to life. You sit near them, shoulders hunched, arms tight across your chest. The heat licks at your face, but the cold still seeps up from the earth beneath you. It crawls into your boots. It lives in your bone. Your coat helps. Your blanket helps, but nothing helps enough. You watch the flames like they're a tether to life itself. You don't want to look away, because everything beyond that circle of light is just black. And in that blackness, anything. You try to sleep, try being the key word. You lie down with your rifle beside you. Like always, its wooden stock is cold against your shoulder, but comforting. It's a friend you never question, a limb you never remove. Your bed is the same. It's always been a patch of ground, a blanket that smells like wet dog and fear, and maybe your cap stuffed under your head like a pillow. You curl up, knees to chest, trying to make your body smaller, trying to make yourself disappear. The dirt is lumpy. Your hips ache. You shift. You curse. You try again. You shut your eyes, and then you hear it, a cough. Not close, not far, just loud enough to remind you someone is sick. Again, you try not to think about it. You try not to imagine the sickness crawling through the tents. One breath at a time, you pull the blanket tighter and hope your lungs hold out. Then there's the crack of a branch. Could be a raccoon, could be a soldier sneaking off for a smoke, could be someone coming to slit your throat. You lie still, every muscle tense. You wait for another sound. Nothing. Your heart thumps so hard it feels like someone's knocking from inside your chest. But still nothing. You breathe again. Sort of. Some men snore, some whisper prayers, some whisper name. One guy near you, the kid from Pennsylvania, he talks in his sleep, calls out for his mother, then says a name you don't recognize, then goes silent. You wonder who he lost. You wonder if he even knows. Yet, there are no lanterns in camp after dark too dangerous. too visible. You move by starlight. If there's no moon, you move by feel. You piss near a tree and hope no one's already there. You listen for footsteps, for voices, for anything that means danger. And danger always means death. Fires, too, are always a threat. One gust of wind, one kicked over pot of grease, and the whole camp can go up. Tents burn fast, blankets catch, men panic. Someone always gets trampled. You've seen it happen. You still remember the smell. Not wood smoke, not pork, hair, skin, canvas, and something else you can't name. Sometimes the enemy comes at night. Not always, but often enough. A surprise volley, a scream, a trumpet too late. And suddenly, you're grabbing your rifle with eyes still half closed. You scramble into the dark, trip over someone's boots, fall flat in the mud, fire at shapes. You don't know if you hit anything. You don't know if you're shooting at the enemy or at your own. When the dust settles, someone's always dead. Sometimes, lots of someones. But even on quiet nights, the fear doesn't go away. It just settles into a dull ache. You lie there and think too much. About home, about how far you've marched, about the men who used to sleep beside you now sleeping underground. You wonder what it will feel like. The moment it happens, will you see it coming? Or just feel the punch of lead and the sudden fall into black? Will it hurt? Will someone hold your hand? Will they remember your name? Or just bury you as another one? The dead are always near, not just in your mind, but in the camp itself, sometimes buried, sometimes not, in the woods, in the fields, in shallow graves you dug too fast to be proper. You've stepped over arms. You've seen dogs chew what used to be someone's face. You've smelled death on the wind. And somehow, you've kept going, because that's what you do. There are nights when the wind moans through the trees, and it sounds like someone crying. You sit up, you listen, you hold your breath, and then it's just the wind again, probably. And then there are the dreams, not of home, not anymore. Now your dreams are full of gunfire that never stops, of bodies in piles, of teeth in the mud, of screams that echo long after you wake. You don't tell anyone, because everyone has the same dream. Some men wake up shouting, some with tears, some with wet trousers and clenched fists. You don't laugh, because next time it might be you. You fear the night, not because it's dark, but because it's honest. The dark doesn't let you pretend. It doesn't let you distract yourself. It just waits quietly and lets all the things you've buried inside come crawling out. Grief, doubt, guilt, terror, memory, they all visit you after dark, and they never come empty-handed. Still, somehow, you sleep. Eventually, not peacefully, not fully, but enough. And when the bugle blows, and the sun drags itself back over the hills, and the camp comes back to life with groans and curses, you wake up, still here. You pull on your boots, you grab your rifle, you fold your blanket, and you walk into another day. You made it through the day, not through a battle, just the day. And in the war you've lived through tonight, that's enough. You didn't get shot. You didn't freeze her. You didn't starve her. You didn't fall to fever or punishment or sheer despair. You're still breathing, still moving, still human somehow. And now the world is quiet. The fire's burned low. The boots are off. The rifle's close, but not in your hands. Just a few feet away, someone's already snoring. Someone else is mumbling a prayer. The rest are wrapped in blankets, curled like question marks. And you're watching the sky. It's beautiful. Really, when the smoke clears and the stars decide to show themselves, you can almost pretend you're back home, lying in a field in July, not a worry in your head. You remember that feel, that smell of cut grass, that hum of cicadas. You didn't think you'd miss it this much. You didn't think you'd miss anything this much. The war feels like something that rewrote you, not all at once, but word by word, march by march, burial by burial. You can't remember what your hands used to look like before the dirt, or how your voice sounded when it wasn't yelling or whispering or praying. You don't remember the last time you sat in a chair, or slept through the night, or touched someone you loved. But even in all that loss, you found things. Strange things, a brotherhood that doesn't need words, a kind of strength that lives beneath exhaustion, a way of listening, really listening to silence. You've become something you never asked to be, and you don't know yet if that's a good thing. Maybe you'll make it home, maybe you won't, maybe the war ends next month, maybe it drags on until every bone in your body forgets what peace feels like. You don't know. You've learned not to guess, not to plan, just to keep breathing. And tonight, that's enough. Back in the world you left behind, where the lights are electric and the coffee is fresh, and no one makes boots out of canvas and pain. Someone is reading about this war in a book. They're warm, fed, safe. Maybe they've walked across a battlefield, now covered in clover and tour buses. Maybe they've seen the photographs, black and white and blurry, of gaunt men with hollow eyes. But they don't know. Not really. Not like you do. Not like you will now. Because tonight, you've been there. You've marched through the dust. You've slept in the mud. You've eaten the wormy hardtack. You've carried a rifle heavier than your hope. You've watched Mendy. You've prayed they wouldn't. You've seen what war actually is: not the charge, but the waiting for the charge. Not the flags, not the speeches, just the smell of powder and the sound of someone's last breath at midnight. You don't need to be told what war is anymore. You've lived it now, even just for a night, and it's going to stay with you. Not to haunt you, not to hurt you, but to remind you of what people can survive, of what people had to endure, not centuries ago, just generations ago, of the kind of strength you never want to need, but admire all the same. So tonight, as you settle into your blanket, or your bed, or your quiet chair by the window, let yourself be grateful for clean water, for warm food, for quiet nights where the only gunfire is on a distant movie screen, for soft pillows, for medicine that works, for peace even when it's messy, imperfect, and always under threat. Because you're not in a tent with lice. You're not watching the campfire die. You're not wondering if that cough you heard across the camp is the next death you'll see. You're here, now, warm, safe, home. So close your eyes now. Let your muscles soften. Let your breath slow down. Let the ghosts of that war fade back into the smoke they came from. Let the camp dissolve. Let the sounds of boots and bayonets and bugles slip into the dark. They're not yours to carry anymore. They were never yours to carry, really. You don't have to wake up in 1863. You don't have to march, or bury, or bleat. You've seen the war. You've felt it. And now you can let it go. Sleep well. You're home. You made it.